Welcome into another edition of Inside Carolina's Postgame Podcast, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. CongruityHR.com/Tar Heels. Get your small to mid-sized business free assessment, and they'll raise you to another level. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Dewey Burke. North Carolina falls to Kentucky 87-83 in this another CBS Sports Classic. I thought it was a hell of a basketball game. When you look at the stats, not great shooting, but great intensity for most of the night. Dewey, your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I hate to say this, but I never felt like we were winning that game. The first 10 minutes or so were very sloppy on both sides as the kids settled in. But then I thought I know we made a couple runs, but in the second part of the first half, I thought their effort was better. They certainly shot the ball better. We struggled shooting to start the game, and I know we made a run to close the half, but I just you can't give up 18 offensive rebounds, turn the ball over 17 times, and expect to beat a top 15 team with the talent that they have. We'll get into it. I'm not thrilled with how we're playing defensively. It was nice to see Cormac make some shots. RJ obviously is always going to be gutty and tough and fight. But I just, even when we took the lead, it was just one of those games. It never felt like we were winning that game, unfortunately.
Yeah, watching it, I felt like it was good to see Withers come out with some energy and have some impact. RJ Davis is just a stud, man. He does everything he possibly can. But when Carolina would, if they would just stay close, stay tagged enough to get a lead, I felt like Kentucky's freshmen might crack. And I tweeted as such, and they did not. Dewey, what part of that is Carolina's defense and inability to rebound, like you said, uh, that allowed those guys just to continue to get buckets, get baskets, and get opportunities, and Carolina just couldn't keep them out of there, especially late when it mattered.
I struggle with the fact that we switch everything every single time. It's a different philosophy, and obviously the staff has their reasoning for it. I just think that it's quite obvious, and so teams start to figure out that they'll just keep running you off ball screens or pin downs until they get the matchup they want. And when you have a team like Kentucky, who's got two guys who can score off the bounce and get into the paint and create shots for others or themselves, I think switching everything ultimately is a challenging way to defend. Um, I would like us. I would love to see us do some different things, even if it was just doubling ball screens to get into some traps. This team has interestingly shown themselves pretty capable in the three-quarter court and full court press. You saw that for one possession, and we got a turnover. But again, it's a philosophical difference that I don't love. It's not what Coach Williams taught. The switching eliminates the eliminates the fact that you have to fight through screens as a defender off the ball. And one of our defensive thoughts for the day often would be don't allow yourself to be screened. Right. And so what coach was getting to with that is yes, people are going to try to screen you, but if your effort level is such that not only am I not going to allow myself to get screened, I'm going to try to not even get touched and fight around it. And so we didn't play ball screens that way. We didn't play off the ball stuff that way. There was it's kind of coach's personality, right? It's like, no, you're going to figure out a way to not get screened. And the switching everything is just I'm just not used to it. And I think it lends itself to almost giving the mismatch if the other team is smart enough to be patient for it. And I think you saw Kentucky almost abandon any set plays in this game and just run a little bit of motion until they got Dillingham or Wagner in the position with a 3 or 4 or 5 on them and said, okay, go create a shot for yourself or somebody else. And down the stretch there, RJ hits those big threes, but we didn't get any stops on the other end. And it was those guys getting in the paint and scoring. So the switching, it's not for me. Let's just say that.
Yeah, certainly a philosophical difference there. And you mentioned getting those guys on a big, on a 3, 4, or 5, I I looked at it maybe a different way in that UConn ran sets and had success against Carolina. Kentucky just ran, like you said, ran around screening, screening, screening until they got the mismatch they wanted. And the mismatch that I saw a lot was getting a guy like Cadeau on one of the big guards or even on one of their wings. I mean, their guards, Dillingham, Wagner, and all those guys are already oversized for Carolina's size. And we talked about that all year, all preseason, how defending that type action and those type mismatches or those type matchups were going to be an issue for Carolina. And I think, to your point, the switching makes that even tougher to do. Just speak about the aspect of it of getting RJ. You know, you saw RJ there at the end got matched up with, I guess, the big guy Bradshaw on the last rebound when nobody on that side of the ball boxed him out. And then you had Cadeau having problems. I mean, Elliot Cadeau is going to be a great player, but at times I felt like he was unplayable during this one because he could not defend these bigger guys. Just what have you seen from that aspect?
Well, what you said is right. Earlier in the second half, they were making it a point to do a little big ball screen with Cadeau, knowing they'd switch and then post up their 6'8" small forwards on him, and he kept picking up fouls and couldn't guard. I was at the UConn game, and down on the floor before the game, I thought we were really small. I just looked at our team and I was like, this is a small team. And I'm not saying anything earth shattering there, but physically seeing it with my own eyes. And then you look down at UConn and like those dudes, they were just a lot bigger. And I imagine that's how it looked today with Kentucky. So we're small. And then I think the switching creates challenges that allows teams to take advantage of us being small. So look, we fought. Ryan hit some big shots, and obviously RJ did too. I'm sure if you didn't care, it was a really fun game to watch. I was just frustrated the entire time because when you give up that many offensive rebounds, careless. I mean, how many times did we turn the ball over when we were in transition? That we stepped out of bounds, we threw it out of bounds, and then obviously the last possession, ridiculous turnover. Who knows what he called in the huddle, but the way Cormac was running, you'd have to think he was going to set a screen, and that's what they drew up. And so, and Elliott threw it off his back. Not sure, and maybe we'll never find out. But yeah, like I said, you can't turn the ball over that many times and give up that many offensive rebounds and expect to beat a really good team. And with that, we had it with one possession, to tie it. Bacot's got to be better. Harrison Ingram was pretty quiet today. We can't expect RJ to score 30 every night just to be in the game, because if he doesn't hit those two monster threes, this probably ends up being like a 10-point loss. That they whittle it away making free throws because we're having to foul. So yeah, we have some shortcomings just athletically and size-wise that we're going to have to figure out how to make up for.
Yeah, Carolina out-rebounded 42-32 offensive rebounds, gave up 18 of them, led to 15 second chance points.
I mean, that's what we do, right? Historically, that's what we do to other teams, and they were just bigger. And the other thing, Tommy, the important point you brought up, RJ's on their 7-footer there at the end trying to box him out. When you constantly switch, when the shot goes up, inherently you're a step late because the switch can't happen at exactly the right moment every time. And then chances are you're boxing out someone that isn't your man. And so you have RJ boxing out a 7-footer. You have Elliott trying to box out a 6'9" guy, right? Like, it messes up defensive balance, but also box out responsibilities. And you saw that tonight. Like I said, it's just not for me. I'm not a fan of the switching. I'd like to see us fight to stay with your own guy a little bit more and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. it's kind of like people say, why don't you play zone? Well, you say, well, we don't play zone because it messes up the rebounding. To your point, switching that much is virtually the same thing.
Mhm.
It is having to go find the guy to box out. And if you end up with RJ on their biggest guy, who credit that guy for making free throws. I mean, he hadn't done
Yeah.
anything all year, and he stepped up and made whatever he needed to make. But when you look at that plus the turnovers, I mean, you mentioned them earlier. Carolina had what? 14 turnovers, 19 points off turnovers. You had the second chance points. Kentucky had 34 points off Carolina not getting it done, either
Mhm.
rebounding or turning the ball over.
Let me make a point, Tommy, because I'm reading the comments. I'm
Yep.
not saying that if we don't switch, that all of a sudden we're going to be better defending on the ball, right? You either are or you aren't, and we are not great defending the ball. I'm talking about we switch every single screen on the ball or off. I would like us at a minimum on off the ball action, pin downs based on box to box screens when teams are running different action. I would like us to fight through and do as I said Coach Williams used to teach is refuse to let yourself be screened and stay with your own guy, right? Switching can make a lot of sense if you're RJ and Elliott and your guys happen to set a ball screen for each other or they do a dribble handoff. More than likely, those guys play the same position roughly. So, okay, switch. Harrison and Cormac, your guys, your wing players that you're guarding, if they do a dribble handoff or a screen for each other, okay, switch. But, when Bacot's man sets a pin down for the kid Shepherd, like, stay with your guy. Just fight around the screen and be there on the catch. That's what we were taught. And so, like, for what reason off the ball, when they're setting a pin down for a shooter, does Armando need to switch on to him? I don't understand that. And so again, just for the people in the chat, I'm talking about we don't have to switch everything. You want to do some stuff on the ball, late shot clock when they set a ball screen, that can be a popular time to switch. Okay, but we switch 10 times in one possession, and I just think it sets us up to be behind, and then the rebounding issue, as I said.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, 100%. And folks in the chat and folks listening to this later and on message boards, it is the way Hubert Davis has done it, and other coaches do it differently. I don't like, to your point, switching 1 through 4, 1 through 5 for this very reason. And it's been exposed more than once this year. But Dewey, as far as defense for this team, I mean, Kentucky likes to run. Kentucky's going to score a lot of points. They had 87 tonight. Um, where can Carolina improve defensively in spite of everything we've already talked about? I mean, how do you?
Yeah, I
It's
think
simply a will and a want to.
there's that, I am not in agreement with what we've talked about the whole pod here with the switching and everything. I actually think we should maybe press a little bit more. For whatever reason, we've shown a penchant when we speed guys up to actually do a halfway decent job, like we obviously did in the Florida State game. So maybe a little bit more full court stuff, but just and again, I'm not saying that the kids wouldn't do this. I'm not saying the kids wouldn't refuse to be screened and fight through it. Just philosophically, they're just doing it differently. That's all. They've chosen that they're going to switch everything, and so I would like to see us play a little bit more traditional man to man, where ball screens you hedge and recover. Um, we also don't deny on the wing as much as we used to, which can help force tempo and because we're trying to play faster. Um, I don't think that the switching everything is necessarily working against high level talent. And so I'd like to see us maybe play it a little differently. I don't know if they will, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. We're talking with Dewey Burke, post North Carolina falls to Kentucky 87-83. Of course, Johnny T-shirt and Congruity sponsors this podcast. Shout out to the 370-ish people that are here. Appreciate everybody joining us here on, it's almost Christmas time, so a lot of people taking time from Christmas parties or whatever to join Dewey and me here. Dewey, let's talk about Armando Bacot a little bit. I mean, Bacot 9 points tonight, 3 for 4 from the line, 6 turnovers, 6 rebounds. Is it time for Carolina fans to come to the realization that Bacot is Bacot, or is it more than that here? It's a lot of the same issues. I mean, he's not going to get any taller. His athleticism is what it is. He doesn't rebound well in traffic, and given how many times players are all over him, not rebounding well in traffic is a struggle. Um, what are you seeing from the big fella? I mean, there's obviously he's been great at times, and he showed a couple. This is what's the most frustrating thing for me, and I'm gonna speak like the people in the chat. He makes a post move, he drops steps, he has a little drop step hook early in the game, and then late in the game he gets pissed off, and he goes the other way and gets a layup in traffic, and those are two of his three baskets on the night. Now, granted, he doesn't get the ball in best places all the time, but your thoughts on Bacot and how he's playing?
Well, he's struggling. I mean, if you were to go back and watch how he played in that run to the Final Four, he was a different guy than we're watching right now. Um, he seems less explosive right now, which is odd because I think his weight is down. Um, there's certainly plenty of tape out there on him, so opponents are prepared. He's undersized, especially against the last two opponents. I mean, those guys are huge, NBA size, and he's not that. And I don't think he's playing with the motor, the intent that we have seen at times in the past. Like I remember talking about this in his first and second year, like being like, God, if he would just really start playing harder, he's got a chance to be pretty good. And then, his junior year and even last year, I don't feel like we questioned effort from him. And he's fighting to get position offensively. Something's just off. He just doesn't seem right. And so maybe he just needs a big game to snap out of it. He just seems a little off to me. So hopefully he can find it. You're talking about somebody that's done some incredible things in that jersey. But he doesn't seem right. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if there's something going on off the court. No idea. But he's better than he's playing, and for us to have a chance to do anything, he needs to get back to what he's capable of, which is being relentless. I mean, I actually remember having podcasts, Tommy, especially when they really started playing well in as they went on that run in 2021. I remember talking with you about, I was like, this guy's relentless. I mean, he keeps coming at you and at you and at you. And you wouldn't say that about the Armando Bacot we've watched this year.
Yeah, definitely. I remember those because he was just, and I don't want to use another bad word, but he was kicking ass during that run. I
Yeah.
mean, playing his butt off. Carolina needs that. I mean, you get 20 from Ryan, who came out of his slump. He made some interesting plays early, but he hit some shots. 27 again from RJ, which is just, he's on a heater. That's ridiculous. Harrison Ingram only 10, Bacot 9. Thought Seth Trimble did a few things, but Seth trying to go up against the big guys got it sent back a little bit. Dewey, I like the fight from this team. I like the effort despite their shortcomings to try to get back in it. They play Oklahoma on, I guess, this week, and then they're off for Christmas holidays. How important is it to get this one against Oklahoma? Because you've got Oklahoma coming up, who's undefeated, unless they lost today, which I don't think they have. Then you have Charleston Southern on, I believe, the 29th. And then it's three straight ACC road games. And
Mhm.
it's ACC. You know about playing in ACC, whether it's Virginia Tech or Syracuse or Pitt or State or whatever. It's always a war. How important is this next one for North Carolina, now sitting at 7-3?
Yeah, if you feel like you have to have it. I mean, I will say every single game, the last one before Christmas, you feel like you have to have it because going into the holiday off a loss is awful. We did that my junior year, 05, oh 06. We went out to LA and lost to Southern Cal. And Coach Williams was so mad ripped us after the game. James Worthy was in the locker room, and he told our team that we should be embarrassed about how we played in front of James Worthy. And then we all had to get on flights back across the country. I took a red eye back to Philly. It was terrible. And so, not only given what's happened the last two games, do we desperately need a win, but going into that Christmas break off of a loss blows. There's no other way to put it, right? And then that's all anybody can ask you about when you're home and you see all your friends. So that's it. That's a gotta have it. Absolutely gotta have it. They need it for what it does for Ken Palm and everything for the tournament and those sorts of things. But it's a gotta have it, just literally because you do not want to go home for Christmas off of a loss.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see. We know UConn's a stud team. I mean, they went to Gonzaga, or they beat Gonzaga on a neutral court. Kentucky, it's going to be interesting to watch them. The young guys. That's your traditional Kentucky team, a bunch of young guys and then an old guy. Dewey, I'm going to ask a last question since I won't talk to you again before Christmas. What's your favorite playing non-conference game, not tournament, not ACC game, but a non-conference game in your career at Carolina? What was one of your favorites?
Oh, it's pretty easy. I think fall of '05, unranked, and went in and won at Rupp with the Hansborough, Fraser, Ginyard, Green freshman class. Yeah, we were unranked and running out on that floor, that place. There's something about the way they built it. Have you ever been to Rupp?
I have not, but it's
There's
loud.
something
I've heard.
there's something about the way they built it. Like it's steeper than the Smith Center. So like the people are on top of you. And they ended up not being good that year, Kentucky, but they were supposed to be good. And going in there and winning, that was my first year on the team. I remember after the game going and talking to my parents, being like, that that was the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. Right? Like,
Is that the
uh,
Noel dunk? Was that David's dunk?
yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was.
The baseline drive, rip through, and the dunk. Rayshon played great. West played great. Tyler did what he does, and we went in there and won. And that was the first. Everybody's seen it now because of social media and everything, but that was the first locker room where coach came in and we all jumped and threw water, and that now it's become famous, and coach did it a ton in his last couple of years that everybody saw. But that was the first one of those that I was a part of. So that one's a pretty special one.
Well, pretty awesome. I'm glad I set you up to have a good memory against Kentucky,
Yeah.
even though we're talking about a loss to Kentucky this time. That's Dewey Burke. I'm Tommy Ashley. Shout out to everybody. There's over 400 people in here. You guys are the best. Justin Jackson and John Bowman will handle post Oklahoma later in the week for their show. Dewey, we might have to bust up on their show and tell them to let us in there. But so that'll be a good one. And as
Mhm.
always, Inside Carolina will bring the content. Adam Smith, Jeremiah Holloway on site, and of course Jim Hawkins with the great photos on the game and all sorts of stuff from the locker room. Dewey, it's always a pleasure, man. I love doing these with you.
Likewise, Merry Christmas. Thanks to everybody for listening. Um, I think I'll close it by saying I still think these guys are together. I think they want to do well. I think they do play for each other. We have some limitations. Certainly, size is something that we're not going to solve. And so maybe if we can throw some wrinkles in, play a little bit differently defensively, and then we're going to be a team all year that absolutely has to make shots. If they're not going to make shots, it just makes it that much harder for Armando to have any space. And so we've got to shoot it, we've got to scrap and stay together, and they've got a chance to be just fine by the end. But they have some things to work out.
Good stuff, indeed. Take care, everybody. Happy holidays. We will talk again soon.